Hi there everybody, my name is Darlene Miller from Mad Science Montreal, Research and Development. I'm going to be overviewing the workshop Seeking Our Senses, which is designed for students in kindergarten up to grade 2. This is the equipment laid before you for Seeking Our Senses. Start with the most possibly troublesome piece of equipment. This is our model eyeball. This is from Epston Science or Edmund Science, depending on where you buy it. And it's pretty inexpensive. Boreal has nice big showy models, and feel free to buy one of the bigger models if it suits your purposes, but they're around a couple $100. This little puppy here is under $30. But you do have to put it together yourself. So I'm showing you the assembled model. Now I've detailed in the equipment list how to put it together because it's not complete. We don't need all the parts. The parts that are important is that you'd be able to take off the front layer. And you want to see, on any model you buy, you want to see that the pupil is a hole. So you want to be able to stick your finger in there. If you find another model that just has a pupil that you can point out, but you can't stick your finger, I'd go for this one here, because you can see that it's a hole. That's an important concept. And I painted it around here. The second layer that you need is to be able to take off this part and see that in the back of the eye you have a hole. Now this isn't the exact location over the blind spot, but there's a hole to pass this little patente thing here, so it works well. You can see that this is the blind spot. So those are the important elements to look for when you're buying a model eye. That you have a hole in the blind spot, and you can see the retina. That the pupil, you have a hole too. And that you have a front part covering the pupil. Okay, so we have our model eye. You need one of those per class. It's a demonstration. You also need either a piece of paper per student, or I used these. This is a rocket body that we have a whole bunch extra, so you can even use a toilet paper roll, or you can roll up a piece of paper like this and use this as a tube. But somehow you need to have a tube per student, so either one of these or a piece of paper. Okay, you're also going to need a blind spot card per student. Now what Florida has done, which is really interesting, is they've taken the blind spot card, they've made it out of a little heavier material, and on the back of it they put their their logo, their address, and their telephone number, because this is something that the students can take home. So that's a good marketing device. One of these per student, and the basic pattern is in the equipment list. You're going to need a penny per pod. You're going to need a magnifying glass per pair of students. Also per pair of students, a piece of sandpaper, a cotton swab or a piece of soft cotton. Again, you want soft and rough. And a nerve tester, which is a paper clip that I've just bent out of shape. So one of these per 2 students, or per pair of students. You're also going to need one Rabby Duck demo. Is it a rabbit? Is it a duck? Who knows? But just one of these, because this is a demo. And these other optical illusions are per pod. So straight or crooked, one per pod. And the basic pattern is in the equipment, and I've just laminated it. It's one of these per pod, deceptive table, one per pod, length of lines, one per pod, and straight or crooked, one per pod. Also, this goes over here, also per pod, one ruler per pod, one student stethoscope per pair of students. You're going to need 3 bowls. That's a demonstration. One tuning fork. And one resonance tube. These are demonstrations. The resonance tube I store, because this is very fragile, in the tube that we use to give our posters to the schools. So I wrap it in newspaper, stuff both ends, and transport it in that. Also, you need one per 2 students, a Mad Science megaphone. Now I've just taken a pylon, a student pylon, that I found at Canadian Tire or Walmart, and I've cut off the tip because it came with a little closed top, and also it came with a flat bottom so that you can set it down on the ground. I cut that off also. It's kind of tiring on the hands cutting through it, but it looks nicer than having the square thing around it. So that's how I made these. And last but not least, this whole workshop has many different ways that you can do it depending on the age group of the class. You can sort of customize it to fit your particular class. And one of the customization is the intro observation. So depending on whether you have a 90-minute class or a 60-minute class, if it's a 60-minute class, this is a sad attempt at a strangely shaped piece of apple. So you want to get something that's edible, that's either an apple or potato, that looks unidentifiable, so the students can hypothesize what it is. If you have a longer class, do the burning candle observation. That's somewhere else in the tape in Mike's inter-observations. Basically, it's your piece of potato, you scorch the almond, put the almond in, and you've cored the potato so it looks like a candle. It's in a candle holder. You'll need a lighter, a little bit of almond. You light it, you have the students very quietly observe it, and you take a bite out of it. But that's in the inter-observation, which we'll be back with in a moment. As with all workshops, Seeking Our Senses begins with an introduction to the scientific method, specifically observation, hypothesis, and experimentation. The way we do this in this class is a little more detailed, again, depending on whether it's a 60-minute or a 90-minute. If it's a 90-minute, you can use the potato candle burning inter-observation, where the students see what looks like a candle, and you have them very quietly just observe, because we're talking about senses. So that use their ears, use their eyes, use their sense of smell if they can, and observe what's happening. And of course you take a bite out of the candle, which is really potato, and you ask them, well, what other senses could they have used to observe what was happening, to come to a conclusion of what the actual item was. They could have used their sense of taste, they could have used their hearing when you bit into it. It crunched, didn't really sound like wax, it sounded more like an apple or a potato. They could have used, again, taste, smell, had they been closer, hearing. So you need all these senses to come to a conclusion of what an item is. You can't always just use your sense of sight. If you have a 60-minute class, you're not going to have time to go through the whole potato candle thing. What you can use, and good luck making yours better than mine, what you can use is a strangely shaped piece of apple. Potato works well, but I couldn't find a potato hanging around here, but someone did have an apple in the fridge, and they're going to be quite sad when they go to lunch and they find out to use their apple. But anyway, you can use an apple or potato and cut it out into like you can make a Pac-Man, you can make a little head, whatever your artistic talents enable you to do, and have the students make hypotheses based on their observations on what this is. Go over it, and then of course you can take a bite out of it. I'm not going to take a bite out of this because it's a little old. And then have them refine their conclusions based on their new observations. And again, you use this inter-observation to talk about observation, hypothesis, and experimentation, but also to introduce the idea that you do use your eyes, use your ears, use your senses to gather information around you. That's what the class is going to be exploring, our senses. And the reason we need our senses is because we need it to get information. So that's the inter-observation. It's a little longer than most. The first experiment you do uses our sight. It's experimenting, or it's making observations on our eyes. What we're going to do is we're going to hand out to each pair of students a magnifying glass, and you're going to have them make observations. So they're going to bring the magnifying glass up to their partner's eyes, make as many observations as they can. Once they've made a pile of observations, have them put down the magnifying glass and share their observations. What did they notice? Describe to me the eye. As they're describing it, you can draw it on the board. They'll say it's roughly roundish. It's got two things in the middle. One is dark. Right, this kind of thing that goes around it. It can be blue, it can be black. They'll definitely say there's an eyelid, there's eyelashes coming off of it. Sometimes they'll see red lines on the white part. They should say it's hard. You may have an eyebrow up here. Get all their observations down on the board. Now, the thing we're going to discuss first is the middle part. And the middle part is called a pupil. This is when we bring out our model eye. Now, the neat thing about a pupil, well, they know the color is black. What a pupil is it's a hole. It's when you stick your finger in to show that the pupil is a hole. Now, we're not going to recommend they stick the fingers in the holes of their partner's eyes. You want them to go home with the fact that a pupil, the black part of the eye, is a hole. Now, what does the hole do? The hole lets light come in. Now, many of them have been outside on a bright day and they have to squint. And why do you squint? Because if too much light gets in your eyes, it hurts. So one thing you can do on a bright day is squint really tightly. There's another thing that your eyes do. Many of them will say, well, they get smaller. So that's the next experiment. Using their magnifying glasses and their partners, if it's a dark room, you can turn off the lights and then turn the lights on as they make observations on the pupil. It's not if the room doesn't get very dark, you can have one student sit with their eyes closed and really quickly open their eyes and have the other student make observations. And what they'll observe, and what they'll share with you, is that the pupil gets smaller in bright light and gets bigger when the eyes are closed or when it's dark. Now, an interesting question is, how can a hole get smaller or bigger? Well, it gets smaller or bigger because this part of the hole, or the pupil, the iris, opens and closes. And that's the first concept that you're sharing with them, is that the eyeball, your eye, has a pupil, the light goes into the pupil, and the amount of light is monitored by this iris, which opens and closes. Okay, and that's our first eye experiment. We'll be back in a moment. Okay, the next part of the eye we're going to explore is our retina. The way we're going to do that is starting off by the blind spot card. Now this works really well for kids in grade 2. Kids in kindergarten have a hard time with this. So that's why we're going to let them take them home. Now the way you're going to do this is hand out to each child a card. Have them, again, if this is kindergarten, you're really going to want to act it out for them, what you're doing. So have them hold the card in their left hand with the spot on the left-hand side. Okay, and when they've got it, they can all hold it up so you can walk around and make sure everyone's got it in the right place. The next thing you're going to have them do is put their left hand, this is their right hand, their right hand holding the card with the spot on the left-hand side. With their left hand, they're going to cover their left eye, like this. So now they've all got their cards holding up in the air, they've got their left eye covered with their left hand. Okay, so far so good. Now what you're going to have them do is bring the card around this close and have them look at the spot. Now they should be able to see it at the corner of their eye without looking at it, the X. So looking at the spot, they can see the X out of the corner of their eye. Now slowly, 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 they should pull the card away from their eye while still staring at the spot. Now what's going to happen as they do that is the X at one point is going to disappear. So if we start slowly, go back, and there we go, the X has disappeared. Now kids in kindergarten are going to have a hard time with this, so just go over it briefly. If they don't get it, it's okay, you're going to be able to bring it home, remember what to do, show it to your parents, but tell them how it works, because how it works is the cool part. To see how it works, we need to open up our eye one step further and show the back part of the eye. This is where the picture gets sent to our brain. This is called the retina. Now on the retina, we have, use your sense of sight to observe, see there's a hole. Now this is a real hole in the retina. This is where all the information leaves the retina and goes to our brain. And that's what we'll be looking at the next part of this class. So there's a hole where all this information is leaving the retina. This is the nerve bundle. And in reality, just for your sake, it's a little bit off to the side. It's not right in the middle like this. But you can use this hole to show that whenever you have an image that lands on the hole, you don't see it. So right around here, in both eyes, you have something called a blind spot. That's a place where you can't really see. But you don't really see a hole because your brain is filling in the rest. So, with our retina out in the open, as it were, and with the information going to our brain, the next part of our sense of sight we're going to look at is how our brain sometimes misinterprets information it gets sent. Now for this part of the class, depending on how well the class is going, how old the group is, how much time you have, you're going to pick and choose which optical illusions you want. If you have an older class for 90 minutes, you can certainly use them all. If you have a younger class, you probably want to use certain ones. One of the ones you're going to want to use for the younger classes to start off with is the Rebiduck, because they can all get this. And the way I do it is I just have them look at it and silently, without saying anything, to think of what it is. Once they've all identified what it is, just have them silently put up their hands. How many students think this is a duck? They put up their hands. How many students think it's a rabbit? Those students put up their hand. Okay, now those students who thought it was a rabbit, can you see the duck? Some of them will look, so okay, I see it. And the ones that finally that they can't reverse it in their minds, you could show them, this is the duck's beak, this is the duck's eye, you know, if it's the rabbit, these are the rabbit's ears, and these are the rabbit's nose, and that's his eye. So the students will see that their brains are playing tricks on them. Sometimes your brain isn't your friend. So this introduces the idea that your eyes see it properly. Your eyes have no problem seeing this. When it gets to your brain sometimes gets confused. With that, with older grades, you can do the hole in my hand, in which you take the tube in your left hand, you put it over your left eye, so both my eyes are open. Then I take my hand and I put it to the end of the tube. So both my eyes are open, and what I see is my hand with a hole in it. And I see through the other side of my hand. So that's an optical illusion, that your brain is playing tricks on you. Another thing that works well with the younger grades, works well with the older grades too, you can hand them out these sheets per pod, one at a time, and have them hypothesize which line is longer. So once they've hypothesized which line is longer, you can give them a ruler, and they can actually measure it. So they're measuring, and that's a good thing. So actually measuring, and they'll see that both lines are the same length. Similarly, you can give them straight or crooked too, have them hypothesize whether or not the line is straight, then have them experiment to measure, see if the line really is straight. So again, your eyes saw the right picture, but your brain played tricks on you. And this last one, whether the lines or not are all the same distance apart, whether they're parallel. And you can measure that by measuring the distance between them at one end and the distance between them at another end. And when you're doing this, allow the students to come up with how to verify. So if you're asking them whether this is straight or crooked, ask them how they could find out, and then give them the tools they need to find out for themselves. Avoid telling them anything. These are the optical illusions. There's the deceptive table. This works well with older grades, again, only if you have time. Ask them how many pennies you could put on the table without the pennies touching any of the rim. Have them hypothesize their number, and then pass out a penny to each pod. And when they put it on, they'll find that one doesn't even fit. So again, it's your eyes playing tricks. Well, your eyes are fine, it's your brain playing tricks on you. Okay, now that ends the eye part, the sight part of the class. So at that point you want to do a quick little review. Sight is one sense, and we're going to go on to a next sense in a minute. Okay, the next sense we're going to explore is our sense of touch. If you're talking to kindergarten students, you may want to explain a little bit what touch is, or have them explain to you what they know about touch. We touch with our fingertips, but we also feel touch all over our bodies. What students are going to do, working in pairs, and I probably wouldn't recommend this for kindergartners. If you have a group that's bouncing off the walls, just skip this one because it's a little more subtle. So you're going to give them a piece of sandpaper and something soft per pair of students, and have them just gently touch different areas of their body, their fingertips, their wrists, their elbows, like the inside of their arm maybe, with both the sandpaper and the cotton swabs. And they're going to feel that in different places the sandpaper feels rougher. Sandpaper on your elbows doesn't really feel that rough, but right here, sandpaper feels very rough, and on your fingers also. You're going to discuss the results, where they felt it the most. Then, using your nerve navigator, and we had fun doing this in the office last Friday, have one partner sit with their eyes closed while the other partner puts the two prongs down on the first partner's skin. And actually, hold on, I'm going to see if I can get someone to come in. That'll be more good of a demonstration. Back in a minute. Okay, I've searched the office for a helper who can help demonstrate this, make it a little easier to see what's going on. And I found Helper. You may recognize her from other films that we've done together. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to close your eyes, and when I push the two prongs, you're going to tell me whether you feel one prong or two. Okay. So start with the fingers. Two. One. Close your eyes. One. Two. One and two. Okay, you get the point. Okay, thank you. You're welcome. Okay, so that's what the students are going to do working in pairs. As you notice, some points it felt like one, and the reason for that is because the nerve endings are so far apart that the pressure is registered as 1. Now if you push really, really hard, she'll probably register 2. So you want to do just very gently. And you could try this at home. So that's that demonstration, and I'm going to hunt for another volunteer that will help us with the next demonstration. Again, I wouldn't recommend doing that with students in kindergarten, as well as the next demonstration. It's really not that great for younger students in kindergarten, but works well for 1s and 2s though. Okay, the next touch experiment that we're going to, that sounds bad, doesn't it? The next experiment exploring our sense of touch that we're going to do is experimenting with temperature, how our skin feels pressure, it feels pain, it also feels temperature changes. Now again, don't do this, I wouldn't recommend this with kindergartens. It's better with grades 1, grade 2, and works well with older students and adults too. Do this at a party. The way we're going to do this experiment is you have 3 bowls of water. One is hot, but not so hot that you can't leave your fingers in it. Warm, and then cold. Cold from the fridge works well, or as cold as the running water will go. One student is going to leave the room, and then you're going to explain to the students that the hot, cold, and warm. That student's going to come in. You're going to soak their hands in the hot and the cold. And then when you place the hands, so say I'm soaking my hand in the hot right now. It's not burning hot. It could be a little hotter than it is. And then when I put it into the warm, their eyes are going to be closed, and you're going to ask them what temperature it is. They're going to say it's cool, because your skin registers changes in temperature. It doesn't tell you absolute temperature, so you can't put your hand outside and say it's 80 degrees. But if your hand's inside and it's cool, and you put it outside, your temperature sensors will tell you that it's warmer. So it registers a change. So when you go from hot to warm, you'll feel that the water's cool. However, if you go from cold, ooh, and that's really cold because it's in the fridge. If you go from cold to warm, you'll say that the water is warm or hot, because your skin registers a difference in temperature. So kids often get a kick out of that when they see their classmates come in and they say it's warm, and then another classmate says it's hot or cold. So that's that experiment. It's a really quick demo. It explores how temperature isn't absolute in our skin sensors. It's either warm or cold based on past experiences, which is why on a hot day, you jump into the swimming pool. If it's colder than the air temperature, it's going to feel cold. Whereas on a cool night, you jump into the swimming pool, it feels warm. So, a little bit of trivia for you. We'll be back in a minute when we get onto our sense of hearing. Okay, we're going to leave touching and we're going to go on to hearing. So with hearing, there's a whole workshop devoted to hearing. So again, it's an overview. So you can tell the students at that time and the teacher that if you're really interested in sound and hearing, we have a whole workshop where we do all kinds of experiments. For our purposes right now, we're going to ask the students why we need to hear how are sounds made. Sounds are made through our vocal cords. For older grades, you can introduce the idea that sounds are made by vibrations. Once all the class is quiet, tell them you're going to make a sound. You're going to make a sound by banging a tuning fork, which is going to vibrate. You're going to hear a noise. The whole class has to be quiet because the noise isn't very loud. And again, don't bang this on tables or on people. Do it on the floor. Now again, this isn't a loud sound. Now sometimes when sounds are too low to hear, sounds can be high-pitched. Sounds can be low-pitched, like a tuba. Sounds can be really loud, like if you're in a bar. Or sometimes they can be really, really soft. Now if a sound is too soft, how can we hear it better? Any hypotheses? One thing we can do is we can make the sound louder. This is when our resonance tube comes into play. This resonance tube will amplify sound waves caused by the tuning fork. So you can hear, and you can you're going to have to direct this at the students. So you're going to have to kind of go around like this to direct it at the students. Then they're going to hear that the sound is louder. So to make a sound louder, or to hear a sound better, we can either make the sound louder, or we can make our ears bigger. And the bigger our ears, the more sound waves that our ears are going to catch, and the better we're going to hear. So that's when we're going to use our megaphones. Now the megaphones, when you pass them out, be very, very strict that these are to be only used to our ears like this. We're not going to speak into them like this, because if people are speaking into them like this, while other people have, whoopsies, almost broke the resonance tube, while other people have it to their ears, this is going to make a really, really loud noise. And you can hurt someone's ears or damage the eardrum. So tell the students if you see anyone talking like this, and don't show them because then they're going to want to do it, but if you see any use of the megaphone other than to your ear like this, it's going to come away. So once the students are all silent, you can pass out the megaphones, and the neat thing is if they just listen with the megaphones without hearing any noise, and they'll hear kind of like a when you put a seashell to your ear. So I'll put this on the speaker. Can you hear me any better? Cool. So what you're going to have the students do is just listen very, very quietly, and they'll hear like the sea, like you do with the seashell. Then they can whisper into each other's, and see how low they can go and still be heard. Now, let me take this off so I'm not yelling in you. You're going to discuss why I was having a bigger ear, why did it make you hear better, why did the resonance tube work, how can we hear sounds better. And this links into, when you review those topics, this links into our stethoscope activity, which is the last activity for the older grades. Now, before you take them out, ask the students, have they ever been to a doctor? And has the doctor ever heard their heartbeat? Well, how could they hear their heartbeat? I can listen really hard and I don't hear my heartbeat. They used a special instrument. What this instrument did is it amplified the vibrations made by your heart. And the way it really works is that you block the air passage with your ears, so that when the film moves or vibrates because of your heart, it's like all the column in the air in the instrument vibrates. So you hear the sound into your ears. You're going to pass these out to each pair of students, and again, be very, very careful that you tell them not to yell loudly, because you can damage the person's ear. Also, you may want to ask them before you give them out if anyone has an ear infection. If someone does have an ear infection, then you don't want them to share stethoscopes, because you don't want to pass on infections. That's just a safety precaution. And after you're finished, you probably want to wipe them off with alcohol before the next class. So kids get a kick out of this. They like hearing each other's hearts. And sometimes there's one school that I do test workshops in. There's a lot of integration with handicapped students. So a lot of the students that have hearing aids, they take out their hearing aids and they listen with this. And it's really cool. Sometimes they can hear better. So this is the final experiment. You let the students experiment with the stethoscopes, hearing each other's heartbeat. You reinforce the importance of hearing, how hearing is very necessary for a doctor, how it's one of our 5 senses. You'll notice that we've left out the sense of taste. That's because we have a whole workshop devoted to taste. With the older grades, that'll finish the workshop. With the younger grades, because you've left out a couple of the activities, you have some time on your hands at this point. And what you can do, if they're really, really young and they weren't working well during the workshop, you may be finished, and that's fine. You can end the class, do the review. If you have an extra 10 minutes, you can play the back game, which is great for the young kids, and it's again using the sense of hearing. And in this game, I used to like to play this game at zoos, you explain to the students that there's an animal, it's one of my favorite animals, that uses only their sense of hearing to catch and find food. You can guess, oh, maybe it's an owl, maybe it's an alligator. Well, this animal, it flies around. Oh, it's a bird. No, it's not a bird because it flies around at night. And it's a mammal. It's got fur all over it. Sometimes they live in caves. Now they've got bats. Great, so I'm talking about bats. Now bats, some bats, use only their sense of hearing. They've got huge ears. And they use something called echolocation. You don't have to get into that, but they use their sense of hearing to catch mosquitoes. They eat lots of mosquitoes in a night. So in this game, the instructor is the mosquito, the big fat mosquito, and all the students are hungry bats. So the way they play it is they close their eyes, they put their heads down, and they can count to 10, they can sing a song, whatever, but you want them to be making noise for a while so you can tiptoe around the classroom. Once they're finished counting to 10, they put their heads up with their eyes closed, and then from somewhere in the classroom you clap your hands. When they hear you clapping their hands, they're to point, using only their sense of hearing, they're to point to where they think you're standing. Then they open their eyes. If they're pointing at you, they found you. If they're pointing somewhere else, they missed you and they're still hungry. You can play that game a couple times, making rather than clapping, you can make it really soft. You can make it harder or easier depending on the students. So that game reinforces the fact that hearing, the sense of hearing, in some animals is the only sense they use to find their food. They don't use their eyes, they use their smell, their taste, their touch, just their sense of hearing. So it reinforces the importance of hearing. It's a good way to end the class. And that's it for Seeking Our Senses. At the end of the class, again, you'll do a review of the concepts you covered and finish the class. Hi there, this is Darlene Miller from Mad Science Montreal. We've been going over workshop videos. The last segment I want to include is something from the polymers, or the slippery science, which is a grade K to 2 slippery science program, which is basically the polymers program. I'm not going to go over the whole workshop because I've already shot a workshop video on polymers. It's very, very similar. Both classes, it's just a matter of scaling down the explanations for the slippery science class. I have included an extra experiment in the slippery science class, which is for the K to 2s, which isn't included in the polymers, the 3 to 6 class. The rationale for that is there'll be less explanation, there'll be less, the experiments will be not as detailed and not as long as in the older class because they can get more of the meat. For the younger classes, it's going to be a lot more topical explanation. So the experiment that I've included is magic mud, or the mystery polymer that you're going to give them. You're going to give them this just before you make the slime. Up until that point, the class is very, very similar, as I said, just not as detailed. So the extra equipment that you're going to need for the K to 2 polymers class, otherwise known as slippery science, is you're going to need one tub like this. This is just a Rubbermaid or Tupperware container. You don't need the top on it. One of these per pod. You're going to need one fork, just stir it up. And you're going to need cornstarch, around ½ cup of cornstarch per group. Now you can make this up before the class. If you have 2 classes back to back on polymers, you can use the same magic mud from one to the other. But if it goes much more than 2 classes, the magic mud gets a little thick. So what you're going to want to do before class is you're going to want to put your ½ cup in here and then mix it up. You're also going to need plenty of newspaper, and this is a very messy experiment. You're going to want to cover the desks completely with newspaper. If you're going to do it on the floor, cover the floor completely with newspaper. Make students very aware of the fact that they're to do all the experiments over the newspaper. If the teacher seems to be kind of paranoid or not receptive to the idea of the students getting a little dirty, you can pass out popsicle sticks, and they can do the experiment with the popsicle sticks rather than their fingers. That keeps them a little more clean. Or if the teacher's really anal retentive about a class, you can do it as a demonstration in the front of the class and have a couple kids come up and do the popsicle stick experiment. So to make this is the toughest part, I think. This is what I'm going to show you. You take water and you add a little bit of water at a time, and you're going to slowly stir. Now the problem is you can't stir very quickly because it's going to resist you. So you have to just stir very slowly, and you're going to mix it up this way. Oops, I've already made a mess. So this is really takes time to do. Put some of the cornstarch on and go very slowly through the mixture. Add a little more water. You can also use the fork as a scoop and sort of scrape it up from the bottom. That's pretty good. Okay. This is roughly what it should look like. What's cool about this is you can give this to the students. It's a little liquidy. And if they put their hands to it very quickly, it acts like a solid. But when you relax, when you don't put any pressure on it, it turns into a liquid. This is a non-Newtonian fluid. It acts as a solid, both acts like a solid and a liquid. And if you rub it around, you can get a chunk of this in your hand. And like I say, it gets very messy because what's going to happen is you're going to have the solid chunk in your hand, you're going to be manipulating it. As soon as you let go, it just turns into a liquid and it gets all over the place. So now that I'm full of this, this is the additional experiment that you're going to add into the polymers or the slippery science class for the K to 2. And other than that, the program is relatively the same, except for, of course, your explanations aren't going to be as detailed, and the discussion portion is going to be shorter. So that's it for me, and that's the end of the workshops.